Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm Father Jim Korda. Wineskins is a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of issues and topics, all from a Catholic perspective. Wineskins is brought to you through the annual Diocesan Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our program today, I will interview William Wainio in part 3 from our series called Spotlight. We will also hear more information on St. Mary of Egypt. And today, as the Church celebrates the most holy body and blood of Christ, we will get a deeper insight into those particular Sunday readings. That and more on Wineskins. In our current issue segment, I will speak with Judge Theresa Dellick. With me again is Judge Theresa Dellick, who is the judge of Mahoney County Juvenile Court. Welcome back to Wineskins.
Thank you for having me again.
You know, Judge, last time you were here, we talked about your First Friday presentation on being trauma-informed. I'd like to kind of follow up on some of the things that we talked about. One of the things that we mentioned, or you mentioned after the taping, was secondary trauma, and I think that is so eye-opening for me. Talk about that briefly.
Well, number one, I don't want people to confuse secondary trauma with burnout. Burnout means you're working too hard, too long, too much. Secondary trauma is when the work you are doing is spilling over onto you. And I'll use a personal example. As judge, I sit in on hearings and I hear about shootings. I hear about people being stabbed. I hear about individuals whose faces are cut up and may never heal properly. That hits me, whether I know it or not. And I have to practice self-care. And even in your own life, if you do not have a job like mine, but if you're an EMT, police officer, priest, a nun, caregiver, you are in the face of trauma. But even if you're not in those positions, you are, because go back to 9/11, because many in that room were present during 9/11. And what is one of the memories we have? We have a memory of the news constantly playing the photo and for the film footage of individuals jumping out of the Twin Tower. How many people did that affect? The media has learned since then that they have the power to traumatize, and they need to minimize that. And that's why you don't see as much of those situations on TV anymore. And locally, I respect our stations because they understand it too. And so that's secondary trauma. Playing video games that are violent is trauma. But then witnessing in situations, living in poverty, and hearing about it is traumatizing because as it's being said, as it's being done, it spills over onto you. And so I want you to think, if you go Maiden on the Mist in Niagara, you're all covered in the rain jacket and near the falls, the mist falls on you, right? So when you're in a traumatic situation, hearing about a traumatic situation, it's going to fall over onto you and you're going to get wet. And so with that, you need to realize some of that mist from Niagara Falls is falling upon you and you need to take care of yourself and you need to practice self-care.
You know, it's interesting. Oftentimes when we talk about something like that, we see people who try to insulate or isolate themselves. That's really not possible. We cannot do that as human beings who are in touch with people on a daily basis. So it's learning those better ways of dealing with that or processing it to understand that it shouldn't really affect me internally where it's going to change my whole life. I can be compassionate and understanding, but yet I've got to kind of move beyond that. How is it, or why is it important for us to look at not necessarily being someone who always fixes something, but someone who deals with others as compassionate as they could?
You don't need to fix everything because if people don't want fixed, you're not going to fix them, correct? Lead a horse to water. But what you can do is show compassion because everybody wants compassion. Everybody wants respect. Everybody wants information. Everyone wants safety, and everyone wants choices. So I want you to practice self-care. Self-care is a hobby, spiritualness, friendships, getting out in the sun, exercising, reading, taking care of yourself, and practice self-care, especially if you end up working with people who have trauma or are in a situation where you have secondary or vicarious trauma.
What I'd like us to talk about is how can we have our eyes open to the needs that are around us, because oftentimes what we want to do is just close our eyes to it and hope that it goes away. Those things don't go away. How can we be more sensitive human beings?
Recognizing that behaviors are coping mechanisms of past trauma. And when you recognize that, then you can see through a different lens that these people are not just nasty. No one wakes up saying, I want to be nasty. I want to be a drug addict. I want to be homeless. I want to be a criminal. But once you show compassion, you can change that. I want you to know not everybody is susceptible at a certain point in their lives to change. We do have individuals who are at certain points in their lives hardened criminals, but you're not able to do that. That takes a whole different level of expertise and skills and resources. For the most part, everyone walking on this earth that you run into, as I said before, respect, information, safety, choices, compassion. Just show that and walk away and be nice. Just be nice. It's not our job to judge. I do want everyone to know it's my job from 9 to 5, okay? Not yours.
Exactly. Judge Theresa Dellick, thank you so much for being with us again and for giving us lots of wisdom, lots of things to think about, but also some tools to utilize in our complex and complexing world that we live in. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. Saint Mary of Egypt was a hermitess on the Jordanian desert. To tell us more is Brother Dominic Calabro. He is from the Society of St. Paul in Canfield.
The biography of this wonderful saint was written by the Patriarch of Jerusalem. Once during the Great Lent, a certain priest monk, the elder Zosimus, withdrew into the wilderness beyond the Jordan, a 20-day journey. Suddenly he caught sight of a human being with a withered and naked body, whose hair was as white as snow, and who fled from his sight. The elder ran for a long while, until this person stopped at a brook and cried out, "Father Zosimus, forgive me for the sake of the Lord. I cannot face you, for I am a naked woman." The priest then drew his cloak over her, and she wrapped it around herself. The elder priest was frightened upon hearing his name spoken from the mouth of this woman, whom he did not know. The woman then related her life story. She was born in Egypt, and at the age of 12 began to live a life of sin in Alexandria. She spent 17 years in this perverted life. She one day boarded a boat which was sailing for Jerusalem. Arriving at the holy city, she wanted to enter the church in order to venerate the Holy Cross, but some invisible force restrained her, preventing her from entering the church. In great fear, she gazed upon the icon of the All-Holy Mother of God in the narthex, and prayed that she'd be allowed to enter the church to venerate the honorable cross, all the while confessing her sinfulness and promising that she would go wherever an all-pure one would direct her. She was then permitted to enter the church. Having venerated the cross, she went back to the narthex and before the icon gave thanks to the Mother of God. At that very moment she heard a voice saying, "If you cross over the Jordan, you will find true peace." Immediately, she purchased 3 loaves of bread and started out for the Jordan, arriving there that same evening. The next day, she received Holy Communion in the monastery of St. John and crossed over the Jordan River. She remained in the wilderness for 48 years in great torment and fear, struggling with passionate thoughts as though with wild beasts. After she finished her narrative, when she stood for prayer, the priest saw her levitate in the air. She begged him to bring her Holy Communion the following year on the shore of the Jordan River in the evening. He wondered how the saint would cross the river. Then in the light of the moon, he saw her approach the river, make the sign of the cross over it, and walk upon the water as though upon dry land. After the priest gave her communion, she begged him to come the following year to the same brook where they had first met. The priest came and discovered her lifeless body on that spot. Above her head in the sand was written, "Father Zosimus, bury the body of the humble Mary on this site. Render dust to dust. I died on April 1st, the same night of the saving suffering of Christ, after having received communion of the divine mysteries." From this inscription, the priest first learned her real name and the other awesome miracles that previous year when she received Holy Communion. She arrived the same night at the brook, which took him 20 days to reach. Thus the priest buried the body of this wonderful Saint Mary of Egypt. When he returned to the monastery, he related the entire story of her life and the miracles he personally witnessed. The Church holds her as an example to the faithful during the days of Lent as a model of repentance. For Wineskins, I'm Brother Dominic Calabro.
back to our show. I'm talking with William Wainio. William, the one thing that I think I'd like to ask you as a young seminarian, in a few years you'll be ordained a priest, God willing. And this is a question that I think oftentimes us older priests ask ourselves and wonder about the young men coming into priesthood. In this day and age of fewer priests, unfortunately sometimes, the pandemic aside, fewer people coming to our churches. Why in this church, in this time and place, do you want to be a priest?
It is scary, pandemic aside, once again, because we study in seminary these studies that have come out recently about, people my age in their mid-20s who are saying they're the nuns, that group of people that they have no religious affiliation. And that is a scary thought, because if it's happening now, what's going to happen in 10 years, 15 years, For me, I, again, turn back to the relationships, and I find it very hopeful for the people that maybe I went to high school with at Ursuline. I enjoy seeing them, whether it's in person or on social media or reading in the news, that they've gotten married, that they've started having kids, and to see that they're still bringing their kids for baptism, or somebody's getting married within the church. It's a great feeling that while there are so many young people out there that are just kind of put off by religion right now, that there's still so many that are searching for a loving place to call home. And I think that's very encouraging to me. Second, though, I've just grown up with it. It's a part of me. My grandparents, my parents, my sister, we've all been enriched by the Lord, and we've been given so much by the Lord. I can't make it not a part of me, and I feel like it's just a calling that the Lord has put on my heart, and I can't ignore it any longer.
The one word that always comes to mind when we talk about work in the church, whether you're a priest or a layperson or religious woman or man, is ministry. Mm-hmm. That's a word that we've come very familiar with. Let's try to revive that word. What does ministry mean to you as a young seminarian embarking on priesthood? I
think Pope Francis has given me my definition of ministry, and that is to accompany the people of God along their own journey. It's not to be steps ahead of them or lagging behind them. It's to be right with them. And if you come out smelling like the sheep, fine, that's for the better. But to walk with people, no matter where they're at, whether they're, have been lifelong Catholics and have fallen away and have come back, meet them where they're at. Whether they are lifelong Catholics and are still, at 80 years old, they are coming to church every weekend, no matter who's going to tell them they can or can't. Walk with them. I think ministry means, again, to remind ourselves as seminarians, as ordained clergy, as sisters, as ministers of the church, that we're no better than the people in the pews. And we have to walk with them as they so graciously walk with us. I can't tell you how many people send me cards just saying, I'm praying for you. That is the best support, because on those days where the term papers get long or the reading seems, undoable, a card comes, or a phone call, or an email that says, I just want you to know I'm praying for you. The Lord knows when you need to pick me up, and the people of God are responding.
I know for me as an older person, time goes very fast. As a young person, it may not go as fast for you, but as you anticipate priesthood, what are you really looking forward to following ordination?
I'm looking to find a parish that I can become a part of. I've been a part of so many parishes, like I said, and I've loved every minute of it. And growing up at St. Luke's with Father Feda, he always taught and reminded me that God willing you become a priest someday, it's not your church, it's Christ's church. You're just a member, a leading member, but you're just a member. So I hope to be able to remember that as long as I live. And no matter what parish I walk into, remember that I am a member and Christ is the leader. And work to bring other people to Christ, and the people that are already in the pews to nurture their relationship, and maybe even be able to bring them a little bit deeper into that relationship with Christ.
In your seminary studies, is there something that you studied that you really enjoyed, that really helped you delve deeper into the Lord and yourself and the church that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I'm coming to the end, like I said, of my second year of graduate work, and I would say that all the courses are important. They are. But the course that kind of brings all the systematic theology and scripture and everything together as one are the liturgy courses. I've really enjoyed looking at the church's liturgy from, the time of its inception through the Reformation up until now, why we do what we do, why we have the prayers that we have. Further beyond that, more than that, to remember that we are living liturgy. That the liturgy doesn't stop when the Mass is over. We're sent forth to be the light of Christ in the world today, which is so dark, as we know. We've seen the past year has just been so dark, and people have lost loved ones. And so let's be the light of Christ, the living liturgy. I think that that idea of being the living liturgy reminds us that no matter who we meet, again, from the strictest staunch Catholic to the strictest staunch atheist, Christ is within them, and we have to be able to see Christ within every person we meet. The liturgy courses have really made me think about that a lot deeper, and I'm grateful for that.
And of course, liturgy basically means the action of the people. And so what we do within the confines of the church building is something obviously that goes out into everyday life, and that we need to keep doing that. Once we get into the parking lot, oftentimes we forget those things.
We do.
But in closing, just share something very personal with the folks that are with us that they can do for you.
I would ask for your prayers. I'm praying for our diocese and for my parish, for the parishes that I've been involved with every day. I'd ask for your prayers for me, for all of our seminarians. They're a great group of guys, trust me when I say that. But also for your prayers asking the Lord to foster in the hearts of many young men and women their vocation, and faithful to their vocation, whether it's priesthood, religious life, or married life, to be faithful in the vocation that the Lord has given them.
William Wainio, it's a pleasure to have you on Spotlight, especially to hear your story. I've known it for many years. It's nice to share it with the folks that are with us, and God bless you, especially in anticipation of your ordination down the road. And we ask the folks that are with us again to pray for you and for all of those studying for the priesthood for our diocese.
Thanks, Father.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you. For more pertinent information and to listen to Wineskins, visit www.doy.org, the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
By the time we can walk, each of us yearns for the joy that comes from being able to do for ourselves. Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy. Church World Service. 33 million Americans have descended into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's.
Our song today is from the CD called Gift of God. It is by Marty Haugen with Susan Briehl.
What do you gain from all your worry? What you should eat or what to wear? There is no peace in stress or hurry. Do you not know that you are held within God's care?
Where your treasure is, there your heart shall be. All that you possess will never set you free. Seek the things that last. Come and learn from me. Where your treasure is, your heart shall be.
splendor. In grace and beauty are they dressed, and yet so soon their bloom is faded. So how much more will those who look to God be blessed?
Where your treasure is, there your heart shall be. All that you possess will never set you free. Seek the things that last, come and learn from me. Where your treasure is, your heart shall be.
Do not fear, little flock, for God delights to give you the blessed rain of God. Give your possessions to the needy. Gain a treasure that will not fade.
Where your treasure is,
There your heart shall be.
all that you possess
Will never set you free. Seek the things that last. Come and learn from me.
Where your treasure is, your heart shall be. Where your treasure is, your heart shall be.
As we celebrate this most holy body and blood of Christ, I will share some insight into the sacred scriptures. Christianity at times has been presented as if it cared for nothing but the salvation of people's souls. Some say that the Christian religion is simply a way of placating people with promises of heaven so that they will not become too discontent with their life on earth. On some occasions, that may have been the case, but that certainly is not the Christianity that we find on the pages of the New Testament. Jesus never made any attempt to save people's souls while caring little or nothing about the rest of the person. Our gospel reading is a clear example of Jesus' total concern for the person, body, soul, mind, and all. He spent the day feeding their souls. Then when evening approached, he switched his concern for feeding people's bodies. The ministry of Jesus was always concerned with the whole person. Now that job belongs to the church. That is you and me. I believe that we can learn something about that from our gospel reading. The first thing we must do is resist the urge to dodge the responsibility. Those first disciples tried to solve the problem by sending it away. Their suggestion was to have the people go into the neighboring villages and farms to find food and lodging. That wouldn't necessarily meet everyone's needs. It would just get them off their hands. Now, before we get too critical of the disciples, we should look at that same tendency within ourselves. Look at the refugee problem or the illegal aliens. For some, the only solution is to send them back home where they won't be bothering us. Well, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I am certain of one thing. Wherever people are in need, across a street or across the ocean, it must be our problem, or else we have no right to call ourselves the friends and followers of Jesus. We may not have all the answers, but we must resist the urge to dodge the responsibility. The next step is to take stock of our resources. The disciples did that. They had only a few loaves of bread and some fish. Small though it was, they could share it. Now, none of us individually has all the resources to meet everyone's needs, but that is not the point. The point is that every one of us has some resources: money, food, friendship, talent, and none of us has so little that they can't afford to share it. The third thing we can do is work together. Jesus instructed people to sit down in groups of 50 or so. In other words, they got organized, and that made their task manageable. Another thing we can do is work where we are with what we have. Every day that you and I live, we come in contact with someone in need. We have to work with what we have at that present moment. Finally, we can depend on Christ to make up the difference between our resources and people's need. The disciples started with 5 loaves and 2 fish, but they finished with everyone fed and 12 baskets left over. I'm not sure how all that came about, but I do know that the difference was Christ. Remember, we are not alone in this. Jesus is more concerned about human need than you and I will ever be. Our task as church is to make a start with what we have and then trust Him to supply the rest. For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. Bread of heaven, we open our hands and hearts this day to receive you. They are gifts from you. We in turn offer ourselves with our lives, so take it and bless it and break it and hand it back to us transformed. Wineskins is a production of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. It is brought to you by the annual Diocesan Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda, wishing you a beautiful week. And we of Wineskins want to extend our prayers and blessings to all of the fathers and dads that are with us on this Father's Day.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. But she's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.